Yo, welcome back to another video. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you're keeping well. So today's video, I'm going to do my mid-year reading statistics check-in, and I'm also going to be talking about where I am with my yearly reading goals and also my most anticipated releases for the latter half of the year. So where I'm at with my current reading goal of reading 50 books in the year of 2023, I've currently read 23 books, so I'm currently 2 books behind on my reading goal, and for the most part this year I've either been on top of it or just slightly behind. So I know that I have a good amount of novellas on my bookshelves. I know I have a good amount of manga that I need to read, and so I'm not particularly worried that I'm only just 2 books behind on my reading goal. However, I've also set myself a page goal count on Storygraph, and I set it at 20,000 pages because I don't believe I've ever even read 20,000 pages in just 1 year, and I'm currently behind on that by about just over 3,000 pages. And to be honest, I think that is my main reading goal that I'm kind of most fixated on this year, is that I would like to focus on the amount of pages that I read rather than the amount of books that I read. But I will obviously try to maintain my goal of hitting 50 books because that's just a personal goal of mine. I've never done it before, and I've just always really wanted to, and I think this is the year I'm actually going to be able to achieve it. So I have not yet read any manga or any graphic novels this year. That isn't really a big deal to me. I just haven't really been in the headspace to read that sort of content. I am looking forward to getting back into it though in the latter half of the year. There's a couple of manga box sets that I have my eye on, and I might just treat myself to 1 or 2 of them over the next couple of months. I just like having a different variation of reading content to consume rather than just it all be novels or what have you. I like the palette cleanser that a manga or a graphic novel can offer, especially if you find yourself slipping into a bit of a reading slump. When it comes to reading books that I own versus reading books from the library, I've read 10 books from my own collection and 13 books from the library. So, that's pretty close, but honestly, I think for the latter half of the year, I'm definitely going to be knuckling down on reading from my own physical collection because that was one of my reading goals. And though that is a very big ballsy goal that I have for myself, I do think it is actually attainable. Kind of. When it comes to the longest and shortest novels that I've read so far this year, the longest is still Babel by R.F. Kuang with 542 pages, and the shortest was The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker at 128 pages. When it comes to the amount of translated works that I've read so far this year, I believe it's only 5 books out of the 23 that I've read that have been translated. Now, I have been reading a translated one at the moment, so it is technically 6 at the time that I'm currently filming, but like I said, I'm going by January to June. Again, I do have a lot of translated works on my TBR, so that's nothing that I'm stressing about, but I am kind of surprised that it is only 5 for the first 6 months of the year. My most read genre, of course, is horror still. I feel like that is not going to change in the latter half of the year. I have, again, over the last year or 2, been making more of an effort to read more horror, specifically more contemporary horror, but I do find that I am missing reading classics. I've only read 1 classic novel this year so far, which is crazy. So that's something else I'm going to be focusing on because I do miss it. And then finally, my most read author so far this year has been Ottessa Moshfegh, and I honestly don't really see that changing by the end of the year, just because I have read 2 of her books so far. I only started reading from her in January. I started with my Year of Rest and Relaxation, absolutely loved it. Then a couple of weeks ago, I read Death in Her Hand. If I shift out of the way, I've got one of her books there. I also have one of her books further down, Eileen, that I'm going to be reading as well. So I just kind of have a feeling that I might just get through her backlog of books this year. So then we are going to get on to the Storygraph segment of this video, and this is kind of like my favorite, where we get to explore the pie charts and the graphs and all that sort of thing. I'm very much influenced by visual statistics, so that's what I love about Storygraph, and I feel like I'm definitely utilizing the different variations of the statistics and the fact that Storygraph also include reading streaks. If you read every day, I'm very much motivated by that sort of thing. It just gives me that nice little dopamine boost that I need to get through my reading. The first pie chart that we're going to be looking at is the moods pie chart. So this is like the moods of the books that I've been reading. And this is based on everyone who's reviewed these certain books. This is based on their own take of what that book felt like for them. So this isn't always 100% accurate. It is very subjective. We have dark, mysterious, tense, emotional, challenging, and adventurous. And it's nice to see adventurous pop up in the first line of moods. The next moods are reflective, sad, lighthearted, and funny. Pretty happy with what these moods are saying about the books that I've read so far. Then we have the pacing of the books. So 52% of the books that I've read so far this year are medium, and 26 are fast, and then 22% are slow. So the page count number of each book is one of the pie charts that I really want to focus on seeing more green, because green equates to over 500 pages, and so far I've only read one. 30% of the books that I've read have been 300 to 500 pages long. 65% of the books that I've read has been 0 to 300 pages, and then 4%, which is the one book, has been 500 plus pages. And then the fiction to non-fiction, which is kind of annoying still, is 100% fiction. I said at the start of the year I wanted to read more non-fiction, and I haven't. I haven't even gone near a non-fiction book. I've thought about it, but I still haven't. So then we have the genre graph, which is not an accurate graph whatsoever. And I only would use this to kind of like guesstimate the amount of genres that I've read so far this year. But the reason why I'm not a huge fan of this particular graph is because they're listed under multiple genres, so they're included multiple times on the specific chart. So the top 3 genres are horror, literary, and fantasy, and I think that is kind of accurate. I will say when we get into the next 2, which are thriller and mystery, that's not accurate. I don't believe that I have read a thriller novel this year. I don't believe that I've read a mystery novel this year. This is what I would like quantify as the main genre of the book. And I'm not a huge fan of thrillers. I find that they're great, again, for reading slumps and all that sort of thing. But I have a hard time with like thrillers and mysteries and like trying to figure out what happened or what's going on, and we're going on this adventure to discover something. Not a huge fan of that sort of trope. But yeah, so that's this chart. Then we have the format, which is 100% print. I still haven't dipped my toe. Well, actually, that's not true. I tried listening to the Dune audiobook in January. There was 2 nights that I decided that I'd listen to it in order to fall asleep. And both nights it just didn't work out, because I'd wake up like an hour or 2 later thinking that what I was listening to was happening outside of my room. And I just woke up in a really bad mood. I enjoy the act of physically reading a book so much that I don't really want to change that. So I don't see like me going on an audiobook journey at all for 2023, but sure, you never know. And I also don't read any ebooks. I don't have an e-reader. I just feel like I'm like a hardcore print person. There's something about just holding the book, being able to smell the book and all that sort of thing. It's just a real ritual for me. Then we have the number of books read versus number of pages read for 2023. And like, yeah, for the most part, it's been okay. I wouldn't say each reading month has been great. At the start of the year, I read 3 books in January. And then I read 4 books the following month and 5 books the following month. So it had been going up, and then it took a dip. Like I said, over kind of like April and May of this year, I had a little bit, not of a reading slump, but I was just busy doing other things. And I'm not going to try to make myself feel guilty over that, because sometimes you need a little break from reading, and it's fine. And it's not a reading slump. You just want to do other hobbies that you're invested in. And usually I would actively make myself feel guilty, because I would think back and be like, think of all the time I wasted when I could have been reading books, or think of all the time that I wasted looking at the internet or TikTok or Instagram when I could have been reading, and I could have read so many more books in that month. And I'm over that. I'm overdoing that to myself. So my reading for this year has certainly gone up, and that's the main thing that I'm going to focus on. The fact that I've read almost the amount of books that I read for the entirety of last year, and we're only in the start of July. So yeah, gonna just focus on good things and not be negative to myself over like time anxiety and all that sort of thing. And then we finally have my star rating. So I'm making an effort this year to rate and review every single thing that I read on Storygraph, just because this was a graph that wasn't existent to me last year, because I didn't rate anything on the on the website. What I really like about this chart is that so far this year I haven't read anything under a 3-star, so I'm really happy with that. And the fact that the second book that I read this year was my first 5-star read, I just feel like overall with the quality of books that I've been reading, it just has been really, really good. I want to talk about the unread books that I have in my collection. So what I've done is that I have documented every single unread book that I own in my bullet journal, and I've organized it via genre, just the way it is on my bookshelf. I don't have a TBR shelf because I don't think that's motivating for me. It doesn't motivate me to look at all the unread books that I have in a row. I find it a little bit overwhelming. If we get into the fantasy books that I own but haven't read, the current amount is at 21, so that's like 5 or 6 more than I had at the start of the year. That includes entirety of series. I don't just put like the first book of a fantasy series down. That's like all of the Witcher books that I need to finish. That's all of the series that I have bought that I need to start and finish. So in that respect, I don't feel like it's too bad. The current amount of unread horror novels that I own is at 18, and that is significantly more than I had at the start of the year, and that's purely because I did a decent amount of online shopping just before the book depository was due to close to get certain horror novels that haven't really, not that they haven't been released over here, but they don't have a wide availability over here. When it comes to the sci-fi novels that I have and haven't read, I've only got 3 unread sci-fi novels. And then we have classics. So I really haven't made a dent on reading classics this year. So far, I've only read 1. The number is at 22 unread classics. So that's a lot. And then for manga, I only have 2 unread manga at the moment, but that's probably going to grow. And then when it comes to literary fiction, I only have 9 unread books. I've been allowing myself to purchase more literary fiction novels or speculative fiction novels this year because I know that, first of all, I really enjoy reading them. It's a nice change of pace from reading like a straight up horror novel, but also because I know like how many fantasy books, how many classics and how many horror novels I have. Like those are the genres that I do not need to buy anymore because I have more than enough to get through at home. But I have been like treating myself every now and again to a literary fiction novel because I'm like, oh, well, I can because I don't own that many unread ones. Don't really want to be doing that over the next couple of months, just going to read what I own. The majority of books that I've bought for myself this year have been from secondhand bookstores and charity shops, and I'm really happy with that because that was one of the things that I felt really guilty of last year, was the fact that I wasn't supporting local independent bookstores, I wasn't supporting charity shops or anything like that. So I've completely just turned that around for the year, so I'm happy with that. Now I just want to talk you through my yearly reading goals and where I'm at with that, or where I'm not at with that, as I should say. I created 10 reading goals for myself at the start of the year, and I've only completed 2. Kind of, sort of, because 1 I thought I'd completed, and then it was announced that there was actually going to be another book, so I was like, oh no. I was a bit too quick to stamp that one in. So my first goal was read 50 books, haven't gotten there yet. My next goal was to finish a current series, which I thought I did. I thought I'd finished the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series, but literally like 2 days after I finished the 3rd book, it was announced that there was going to be a 4th book in the series. Even though I'm so delighted that that's coming out, I can't include that now. So basically, we're back to where we started with that goal. I also want to complete the works of a classic author. Haven't done anything to do that, so that's another one that I need to be focusing on. I also want to read a book that's over 1,000 pages. I've been trying to motivate myself to pick up a book over 1,000 pages, but I think because there's been moments where I do drop behind my reading goal, I haven't made that a priority to do, and I just need to do it. I just need to do it because I know the book that I'm intending to read is going to be one that I really, really enjoy. My next goal was to read a book from an unfavored author, and I do have this in the works, sort of. What I mean by that is I've ordered the book in at the library. I'm going to be reading Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. Murakami is an author that I feel is like incredibly overrated. I've only read 1 book from him, but I found it to be quite misogynistic. I don't necessarily like the way he writes female characters. I just don't see the hype. You know, I'm not a huge fan of magical realism either. I know that there are people who are so passionate about his works and stuff, and like part of me does feel like I'm missing out in that regard. My next goal was to complete every single TBR that I set for myself, and so far that's going pretty well. I think there's only 2 books of one certain TBR that I haven't read yet, but that I am going to read, so I'm happy enough with that. I don't think that is going to be as difficult to do as I initially thought it was going to be. Then my next goal was to read 5 nonfiction books. Haven't done that. Like I said, haven't even gone near a nonfiction book this year, so that's something that I need to correct. My next goal was to finish an entire series back to back, and I think that's going to be something that I either do this month or next month. I think I'm at the point now where I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to do that. My next goal was to read a new release from 2023, which I've already done. It's literally now the only goal that I've completed so far for myself. I read How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. Enjoyed it for what it was. Kind of wished that the ending was a bit different. But yeah, enjoyed it. And there's definitely a lot more new releases for this year that are coming out that I'm really, really looking forward to. So I think this is going to be like a new release heavy sort of reading year for me. So that's new because for the most part, the authors that I read are dead. So and my last goal was to read every unread book that I own. And again, I feel like that's going to be a struggle. That with the page count numbers are going to be the 2 struggles of the year, because if I don't stop buying books now at this point of the year, I'm not going to achieve that. And I just want to talk about now my most anticipated books to be released for the latter half of the year. So the first book that I want to talk about, which I've already briefly mentioned, is the 4th book in the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series. This was only announced a week or 2 ago that there was going to be a 4th book, because I believe initially it was just going to be a little trilogy of books, and that was that. I was absolutely delighted when this was announced, and the thing is that on paper you wouldn't think that this is a series that would necessarily appeal to my reading tastes, because obviously I like the kind of darker, more depraved sort of things. Before the Coffee Gets Cold is a series that has brought me so much comfort, which is kind of odd because a lot of the time the subject matter is about loss and getting closure and dealing with the potential of like something bad happening to someone you love. There's a lot of sadness to it, but it is very much focusing on the people who are here and living and kind of moving on with your life and all that sort of thing. So I think that's the aspect that gives me a little bit of hope. And it's just such a heartwarming series. Like, I've just fallen in love with all the characters in it. I can't wait for this 4th book, and it looks so pretty too because it's pink, and I'm just like, I don't really own many pink books, so that'll be a nice addition to the collection. Then we have another Japanese author, Banana Yoshimoto, is coming out with a new book called A Premonition, and that's coming out on September 12th. And that's something I'm really looking forward to, because it's about a girl who basically knows that she's missing a part of her life. She knows that there's something that she's not quite remembering correctly or remembering at all. And she ends up like leaving and going to live with another family member. She lives with her aunt, and it's there where she starts to realize that this kind of feeling of not having this certain memory or whatever it is that's going on intensifies, and she starts to recollect and all that sort of thing. We also have the paperback edition of The Shards by Bret Easton Ellis coming out. I love Bret Easton Ellis. I'll just say that now. I love him. This is his first fiction book in quite a few years. His last book that he published was a non-fiction book, and it was like mostly complaining about millennials, so I didn't read it. I listened to his podcast at the time, so I felt like I really didn't need to read the book. The Shards sounds like he's leaning back into his specific style of writing and the type of characters that he enjoys writing about and all that sort of thing, but it had a hideous cover when it came out here initially. I thought it was awful, and I was just like, okay, well, it's also only in hardback. I'll wait for the paperback to come out, and now I'm going to finally get around to reading it because it's coming out quite soon, and I'm very excited. Paul Tremblay has a new short story collection coming out, which is called The Beast You Are, and that's actually coming out in a couple of days, if it's not it says add to basket. It probably came out like yesterday or today or so. I'm really looking forward to that. I'm trying to read more modern day horror short story collections because that's something that I want to do a video on in the future. So I'm basically like reading as many short story collections as I possibly can that have been published in like the last like 10-20 years or so. There's another book that I'm looking forward to. It's by the author who put out Hyde, Kristen White. She's got a new book coming out called Mr. Magic. And it sounds really weird. It's basically about a bunch of kids who were on a TV show when they were younger. And I don't know if it's like something happened on the set or something along the lines, but when they grow up, they realize that they have to like deal with whatever trauma they experienced on this show. I think it sounds kind of cool. Obviously, Rogue by Mona Awad. I am planning to read like another one of her books. I think it's like All's Well soon. The promotion behind Rogue has made me so curious about it. I just feel like everyone has been talking about it. I've seen people get the arcs of it and seen nothing but good things about it, and I have absolutely not a clue what it's about, but I'm assuming it's going to be some sort of like woman unhinged type of story. The last book that I'm really anticipating is one by an author that I've never heard of before. I'm not sure if this is this author's first published work or what have you, by it's by an author called Josh Winning, and it's called Burn the Negative. And again, it sounds like it's going to be super fun. The plot synopsis kind of reminds me of like something that Grady Hendrix would write, but basically it's about a young woman who starred in a 90s horror film that was believed to be cursed. So poltergeist type of vibes, if you get what I mean. And basically they end up remaking this film, and I believe they want her to star in it again, but she's really dubious about it because obviously there's some sort of history of trauma there of like whatever she experienced as a child. If that was a film, it would be a film that I would want to watch. And I have to say that this is definitely one that I was influenced on learning more about purely because of the cover, because the cover has such an old school vibe to it. It really reminds me of like one of the original covers of Rosemary's Baby. It's just got that specific font and that kind of minimal cover art. I'm going to leave it at that because I feel like I've absolutely talked off your ear, and I feel like most of this video has just been me rambling about nothing. So that has been my mid-year reading check-in and the rest. I can't even remember like the other parts of this video that I discussed because I've just been talking for so long now. But yeah, let me know if you are on track with your reading goals for this year. Let me know if you've got any super anticipated releases for the latter half of the year. And as always, if you want to follow my reading and follow my shenanigans outside of YouTube, you can follow me on my Instagram or TikTok. I just put up a new TikTok the other day about the library books that I have out at the moment. I like doing little library hauls and stuff like that over there. I hope this reading year is going really well for you. I hope you're smashing every single reading goal that you've created for yourself. I hope you have some books to really look forward to. And as always, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.